This is the CU Denver Institute for International Business Career Spotlight interview with CU Denver graduate Shawn Kumar. Shawn, thank you so much for speaking about your experiences with our students so they can learn from it.
Yep.
I'd like to get us started talking a little bit about your academic background, how you got into your current position, and how you got into international business.
First off, I'll start at the academic part. I got into, I had a degree in economics from CSU. And then after several years of working in the real world, I've always wanted to work and live abroad. So I was kind of focused on, at that time, what was known as international business. I wanted to live abroad and do all that. And so at the time, I thought I wanted to do Thunderbird. I don't even know if they're still around because they offered a dual degree with CU, Denver. So I applied to that. And then I just ended up getting a scholarship and doing a dual master's in international business and information systems. Career-wise, I started in tech during the dot-com bust. That was a fascinating time. And then went back to grad school because it was there was no work in tech after that, after the dot-com bubble burst. And then so I went back to school, focused on my dual master's. Loved the experience, loved the learning, loved the different trains of thought, out of the box thinking. And then took a role at a company in Denver called IQ Navigator, and then continued on tech from there. Got into different roles in tech. I've been a web developer a long time ago. It was during the dot-com bust era, and then was in what's called QA for various companies, and then went into project management, and then product management was what I'm currently doing.
And what made you wanted to stay in tech after the dot-com bust?
Good question. I love tech, I think. I didn't see myself in any other industry really at that time. So I knew that tech would eventually come back because I knew there was a huge future in it. So, and my skill set was more lend itself to tech at that time.
Coming from a background of large corporations and startups, what are some pros and cons you see in doing business in the tech industry from both environments?
Okay, so you want kind of a separated list? Is that what you're
kind of... So what is it like working in tech from both sides? And then how do you like working for a startup now?
So just to preface that, I've worked in enterprise companies. I've only worked for one real true enterprise company, but so I'll frame it there. And my experience at that one enterprise company, most of my experience has been in startups. Okay. But at the enterprise level, I would say the pros are, your academic background is more important, and it's more of something they may look for. Doing, SWOT analysis and things like that. It's actually something you do, at least in marketing and product, competitive analysis and things like that. You do a decent amount of that. There's good training. There's time to learn the role and be trained up on it. There can be good mentors there and good support there. And I'm trying to think what else. I think generally at an enterprise company, it's pretty much what you think. It's a large company, lots of opportunities, lots of different departments and roles you can pursue after you start the company. So you're not just confined to like a little company. Cons, you tend to have a very specific role. It's very prescribed. You can't really, what they would always tell me is don't get out of your lane. Don't get out of your swim lane. And I did that all the time because I come from the startup world. Um, you're typically, it's the old phrase, you're just a number, you know. Um, you don't have really a sense of purpose as much. There is a tendency, in my experience, to be micromanaged. There's lots of politics, in my experience, and you can feel like you don't have much impact. Those are the cons. Startup pros are it's very dynamic work environment. You can wear what's commonly known as wearing multiple hats. So you learn different roles, different things.
Mm-hmm.
You do whatever is needed sometimes. You do have a greater sense of impact in what you're doing. You typically, at most startups, you do get equity in the company, so there's a sense of ownership. You don't really get that at enterprise level, but maybe some might offer you some stock at the enterprise level. You also, at the startups, you have, I would say, at least it's been my experience, a greater sense of autonomy in your work. Most of the time. I mean, some startups, they might micromanage you. I don't know, but it can happen. Some of the cons would be, it's a startup, so things can change on a dime. Your tasks can change on a dime. The company might not survive, and you're not going to be around if it doesn't. So there's always that risk. It's a greater risk to work for a startup. So
Okay.
that's the biggest.
And then, sorry, keeping on that path a little bit, how has your experience, like at CU Denver as a former student, how has your school from there impacted your career experience in tech and in those startup positions? Say, has it helped you navigate the challenges? Or
startup or enterprise or both?
Up to you, either.
At the enterprise level, kind of what I mentioned before, some of the things I learned at the master's level are more relevant.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, SWOT analysis and some other things are a little more relevant at the enterprise level. It's almost as if the enterprise companies are more framed and a lot of the tasks they do at the enterprise level are what you would learn in school. Not a lot of tests, but some of them.
Okay.
At the startup level, not as much, right? It's kind of like I mentioned, it's very dynamic. It's kind of a scramble to figure things out and get things done. Doing some of those things you learn in school are maybe not as relevant as much, but some of it does help. So, but I would say the startup world is much more, fly by the seat of your pants, on job experience is more relevant.
Great, thank you. And what do you see as the most important leadership qualities to have when working with a multicultural team? And can you speak on some of your experience working with multicultural teams?
Yeah, in tech, that's usually they're called. There's two things you can frame that as. It's either cross-functional or multicultural. So I'll go down the multicultural path first. Yeah, so I would say the multicultural thing. I think some of the leadership qualities that are really key are, one, being organized, being an excellent communicator is huge. Especially multiculturally, over communication is very important because these teams, I'm speaking with working with offshore development teams. These teams, especially in India and Asia, unfortunately, there are yes cultures. So they'll tell you they're going to do something, and you have to kind of dig into you have to dig around that yes culture part. So that can be a huge problem in tech because they'll say yes, they can do something, but once they start doing it, they realize how big of a task it is, or it can't be done, and that can cause huge problems. So being able to communicate, over communicate what you need done from them is extremely important in my experience. Eastern European developers, I prefer actually, or South American, because especially with the Eastern Europeans, they will challenge you. They'll be like, no, that's not, in my experience again, that is not how it should be done. You should do it this way. South American, it's mainly about time zone is the biggest thing. Other leadership qualities are kind of along the lines of communications, clarity. Building relationships is also key. It's hard to do virtually, but you can do it. Multiculturally, being flexible, especially when working with Asian teams, South Asian teams, because of the time zone differences is huge. Yeah, I would say those are the big ones, especially with multicultural teams.
Have you noticed a shift in tech for people being more accepting of relationship building? What's the word? Like virtually, basically. Because we've been on Zoom so much.
That's accelerated during the pandemic for sure. Yeah.
And then on that point again, how have you learned to be clear to other cultures? I know sometimes it seems like it's cut and dry, but do you have any tips of how you can communicate more clearly with those people, especially in such a niche industry that you need everything done a specific way usually?
Well, one is be very clear on the requirements. Two is over communicate, like I said. Three, unfortunately, it requires more time for you to communicate your requirements to the team, which is a challenge when they're in a different time zone. A lot of times, too, is you need to kind of build relationships with each individual team member and have one-on-one meetings with them to understand some of the challenges. Because as we all know, in meetings, some people won't bring things up with you, and if it's a team meeting. So really try to build relationships with each team member the best you can, or each lead on that team.
And what advice would you give someone pursuing a career in your field?
What would you tell someone? What would I tell someone?
Yeah. A student or someone just graduating?
If you're a student, learn code. I mean, that's the biggest thing. At least learn some of it, so at least understand it. If you don't want to do the code, learn other aspects, maybe usability or design. Learn that. Some other things that lend itself to tech are, ability to understand development process and things like that. You can learn that, but that development process has changed quite a bit. When I graduated, I was in CU Denver. They were teaching me waterfall, but when I graduated, that wasn't being used at all. At least in software development, it was not used. It's now agile, and now people are moving to what's called continuous integration. So I would say the big elements are see what's really in demand, because that's also changing very rapidly. What was in demand 10 years ago may not be in demand now. So learn what's leading in tech. Right now it's Web3, it's blockchain, AI, ML, which is the industry I'm in now. I'm trying to think what else is Web3. I think that's the majority of it. There's a third channel, I can't quite think of it. I'll think of it in a minute. But those are the two big ones.
Do you see yourself staying there, or you try to adjust as well as new technologies come up?
You have to adjust in tech. You can't sit idle. You have to be always learning. This industry is very fast. It's changing very rapidly, and if you don't change, it'll leave you in the dust, and you'll be out of a job.
And then we haven't talked much about your job as a product manager. So do you have also any suggestions for students looking to pursue that job, even if it's not necessarily in tech?
Yeah, product manager lends across many industries, not just tech. So yeah, I mean, I think the MBA or whatever, there's other masters or degrees, not necessarily at the undergrad level, and at the undergrad level, there's many aspects of business that lend itself to being a product manager. Like I mentioned, just some specific example or SWOT analysis, competitive analysis, understanding markets, understanding market demand, understanding user demand, things like that. But again, product management applies across many industries. There's an extremely high demand in tech because tech is exploding and has been exploding. But I think various courses can lend itself to product management. Think of product management as having many aspects. It has many. It's like you're like a hub in a bicycle wheel. There's many spokes coming into it, and there's many different aspects to it that you can learn. Right now, I'm trying to improve my usability and user interface skills because we don't have a designer full time. So I need to step up at the startup again and learn that.
Great. Yeah, you just mentioned, I guess, one of the skills that you're improving. Is there any other skills, abilities, or experiences that you'd recommend people look at exploring in order to get into either tech or product management?
For product management, I think there's many different aspects in product management. I mean, there's some of the things I've already mentioned. There's also, and just trying to think outside of tech, but understanding, and this could apply to many industry, consumer user demand, understanding their needs, understanding why they buy products. And that has changed in the past, actually the way that's done has changed in the past probably 5 to 6 years. It's much, again, I'm going to speak to tech. It's much more user-driven focused and less, top-down assumption focus. You can't make assumptions about users' demands or consumer demand. You have to understand the user and be data-driven about it.
Do you have any suggestions of resources of how students can improve their skills or abilities or experiences as they're going through their degree? Or even post-graduation, what they can do to get into the workforce?
Yeah, you asked me that question earlier. I didn't address if you're graduating. So I'll frame it in both you're a student and if you're graduating. There's a ton of online resources. There's Coursera is excellent. Google now has certificates you can get that are excellent. Udemy, all those are excellent. The only problem with that is what I've kind of discovered is depending on your learning style, we're always taught from a kid, from an early age. You go to school, you do what the teacher tells you, and you get it done. Well, now it's much more self-motivation, which can be harder to do. So depending on your learning style, I still struggle with the self-motivation part, and I need those deadlines to kind of keep moving forward. So some of them, they're instructor led. I would recommend those, but test yourself, see how your learning style is. Try and get in there every day and learn. But there's some excellent tech courses out there now.
And is that the same for product management, you'd say?
Yeah. Okay. So product management, yeah, there's all kinds. There's stuff on Coursera. There's Coursera. Am I saying that right? And there's also a place called Product School, and they offer certificates. I've heard mixed things about them, but they do have excellent, they have a certification you can get with them, and that can kind of boost your credibility somewhat. Keep in mind, I think I mentioned it to you. So keep in mind, some companies have what's called an associate product manager, APM. They call it APM out there, and with the intent of it's tends to be geared more towards recent graduates. But those are the big companies that do that. Like I know Google does it. I think Amazon does it now. I think various companies do it. It's sort of a newish thing that's going on.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any more advice you just give for students in general going through their degree and looking to graduate based on either courses, or it can be working professionals going back to school?
Yeah, so I mentioned taking courses online while you're studying. That can be kind of grueling. While you're in school, look at the courses you are taking in school, and some courses you can try to see if there's demand, and there's so much information out there about what skills are in demand. Don't take a course that's not really in demand. I mean, if that's, if they're optional courses, right? You have the required courses, but don't take something that's just sort of fluff. Don't do it. It just won't do you any good. What else? One course, there was a few courses I took that I thought were pretty valuable. One was emotional intelligence. That's a topic to your multicultural question that came up. The ability to master that is good. That was an actual course I took at CU Denver. There's another course that was around processes and business processes that really helped for software development, understand software development process and how to improve things like that. There's a lot of jobs out there around business processes, software development processes. There's many certificates out there where there's demand for that. Certifications are also, I need to mention that. Certifications seem like they've become pretty popular the past 5 to 7 years, at least in tech. I don't know about other industries, but certifications do help. But my impression is don't over-certify yourself, because it may just look like clutter in your resume. Okay. So, be focused. Find if you want to go into tech, find a part of tech you're really interested in. Is it design? Is it machine learning? Is it artificial intelligence? Is it blockchain? Does it interest you? Do you have a smidgen of interest in it? And then explore it. Don't do something because there's demand. You'll not be happy. You won't be happy.
So that was going into what I was thinking next. Mm-hmm. How does a student or someone graduating know what it is that is in demand, but also identify some of their skills and what they're passionate about? How do they kind of merge those into an industry? And how did you do that?
Yeah, that's kind of a tricky question, I think, but it's an important one. Um, as far as demand goes, you can Google it, like tech skills in demand or whatever phrase you want to use, or jobs in demand. And there's a lot of data out there on what are the most highest job postings. And the one thing you can do is just get on LinkedIn and look at the job board, see what people are asking for, what skills they're asking for. That's one way to do it. And sorry, the second part of your question was how do you merge those two? How do you find your interests? Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think for me, I found that my interests, I have various interests, but what I tend to look at maybe in the news, well, not lately because of what's going on, but because I don't want to go to war. But I think what's interesting lately for me and always has been is the leading tech. What's happening? What's going on in the news that tech may be able to solve. What's going on in social media, what's going on in various industries. So maybe to reference maybe design per se, are you artistic? Are you creative? Does designing different ways to build web platforms, does that interest you? Dabble in it, try it, play with it. And the thing is it may interest you in the beginning or it may not until you get into it. So you may find you're really interested in it, or you may find you're not interested in it after you dabble in it. That's the whole thing. It's one thing to think about it. It's another thing to actually try it and do it. So it's not an easy thing to find your interest.
So I know I've learned a lot about internships being a big way that you can apply that experience and learn from them.
Yes.
Would you say that's the most helpful way to get yourself into it, or it's mostly self-exploration, or
both? I mean, if you can, internships are excellent if you can find one. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They're really
Is there any other suggestions for how you can get involved to experience
volunteer
a different industry?
Yeah. Offer to work for free if you can. I mean, if you have the means to do so. Or find if you can find a mentor, maybe. There's a website called Mentor Cruise where you can find mentors across various industries. Of course, they charge per month, but it's not much. It's like $100 to $300 a month. It's not horrible. And you meet with them once a week. I recommend, finding somebody in the industry you'd like to target. Keep in mind, we change careers so many times in our lives that what you pick may not be what you're doing 5 years from
now. Yeah, great advice. Did you have any mentors in your experience as you transitioned over the last couple years of your career?
Yeah, I've had a few. When I first got into tech, I was in support and the company offered, like a mentor in the company, which was excellent. That really helped. And then recently I've actually gotten a mentor, couple mentors, no, just one mentor. And mainly I do that just to kind of bounce, because product management is so dynamic and it's changing really fast. In the way we do things, as soon as I bounce new ideas off of my mentor, I haven't talked to him in a couple months, but sometimes I want to just bounce ideas off them, like, hey, what if we did this way and stuff like that. It's not something you want to ask your colleagues, hey, you can, but it's more focused on the profession of product.
How did you find your mentors after, I know you mentioned just that the company set you up with one, but after that, how did you, I guess, identify who you wanted to be your mentor and then create a connection with them?
Most of the time after that, a lot of companies don't really do that for you. In startups, they don't do it for you. Typically, they just don't have the resources.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's just building relationships with somebody, and just talking to them and building it that way. It's not an official mentor per se. Sometimes it's just a colleague,
Mm-hmm.
Like at my last job, there was a team of us, and it was usually a colleague who aligned with you on being very eager to learn new ways of doing things, bouncing ideas off each other, things like that. One thing in my last job I did was I was really keen on learning about what's called the methodology called jobs to be done. And me and two other colleagues we actually took a course together, and we took the course and we met about it. We talked about it and thought about ideas and ways we could apply it to our current company's product.
Awesome. And lastly, just anything on how would you describe your work-life balance and having time for personal life but also a tech life when it's so demanding all the time?
You said tech life? Is that
what just a career in general. I've noticed when I'm on the computer, I feel like I'm always on the computer. So
see, there's the tech life. I'm sorry, you can take this off, but tech life, and then there's real life. Oh, I remember Web3, AR and VR. That was the third leg of Web3. Sorry.
Okay.
AR is going to be next. Yeah, so I would say the biggest part of work-life balance, that term came out about 7 or 8 years ago, and in tech, no company really honors it. Google wants you to live and work on campus. Well, not live. Pretty soon, maybe they'll build apartments there, but I don't know if they're going to do that anymore. They feed you and everything. I would say the biggest way to do that is work remote. I am a huge advocate of working remote. I mean, I love it. I've always worked remote on and off. That being said, it's harder to build relationships working remote. So you have to, maybe a hybrid model is better to at least your first year to kind of build those relationships. But yeah, work-life balance, it's not easy in tech. It's a fast-moving industry, and you work a lot. And as we know during the pandemic, that work-life balance is more important than anything.
Mm-hmm.
If all you're doing is working your whole life and then you retire at 65, that's not much of a life, in my opinion. You've got to have that. You've got to have that outside passion. If that passion is tech, that's fine. But if that passion is something completely different, that's good too. But, set aside time for that. It's not easy. But like I said, working remote makes it a lot easier because you're not going to a box that comes from the days of industrial manufacturing where you clock in at 9 and you leave at 6, whatever it is, or 5. But we all have different working styles. Sometimes we work better in the morning, sometimes we work better at night. So how does that fit into the 9 to 5, right? It doesn't. I work better in the mornings. I tend to fade off in the afternoons and then sometimes work at night. But so when you go to an office at 9, you leave at 5, your mind tends to leave work at 5. and then there's the commuting, and then there's the getting ready and all that. I'm a huge advocate of remote. I'm a big passionate person about being a digital nomad. I've done that. I've lived abroad, and that was my international business way, is just to go travel and be a digital nomad. I want to get back into it as soon as I build some trust and relationship with my current role.
Great. And speaking on the remote piece and building that work-life balance, I know you mentioned your body clocking out at 5 when you leave your job.
Your office.
How do you?
Your office. At home, you don't. It tends to. Unfortunately, it's a con, right? It tends to be kind of muddled. There's kind of a gray area there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, there's drawbacks working from home, and that's one of them. You tend to just keep working because you're not having to get in a car and go home, or whatever case may be. Just like when we study, though, here's the caveat. When we want to study for a final exam, or we need to study, sometimes we might go to the library or someplace else where it's quiet and no distractions. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll go to WeWork or a co-working office, and I'll work there. And sometimes depending on where my cycle of the day is or where my mood is, I'll get more work done there because there's no distractions. And when I mean no distractions, there's zero distractions, because there's nobody there that you work with bugging you, interrupting you, asking you questions, which is okay. But, if you've ever heard of context switching, it can really cause a disruption. Just like if you're studying, if you're focused on something and somebody interrupts you, it takes a while to come back and get away from that and come back. This is especially key if you're doing code. But as with anything, I've heard it takes 20 minutes if somebody interrupts you, it takes you 20 minutes to come back to what you're trying to do, to refocus the mind. And that's a huge interruption. That could be 40 minutes.
I had never heard of that.
I think it's 20 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes to recalibrate your brain into what you're doing. Especially if it's very specific. You were looking at something very specific, especially with like math or code or something like that. It can really be disruptive, because then you got to rethink about what you were trying to do. And if you're trying to conquer a major problem, you got to get your mind back into it after you're interrupted or distracted. You might self-distract, right? I mean, we all have ADD these days because our brains are used to instant gratification. We're training them to be used to instant gratification.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that. I know there's been plenty of times when I'm working on something and someone says something and I have to start the whole problem over again just to remember where I was in the first place. So
yep. I mean, I think 20 minutes is an estimate, right? Probably an average of what they've determined. But, depends on what you're doing. So, the co-working thing, sort of a in between the office and working remote.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Shawn. That is all of my questions for now. So we'll be done with this interview unless you have any final words, thoughts, experiences you'd like to share that you have.
So I think you have a question about any advice for students in general. Was that another question that you had?
I asked that earlier, but if you have any more, feel free to speak on it.
Yeah, let me give me a minute. While you're in school, so I think one thing is the job market of today is extremely dynamic, fast moving. Companies, there's that old catch-22, like they won't hire you unless you have experience. well, how do you get that experience, right? When we talked about internships, we talked about different things. One way I think, and I touched on it earlier, is to get skills. Companies are really focused on, can you do a task? And typically the bigger companies have the resources and the ability to train you and get you up to speed. Startups do not. They want you hitting the ground running because they don't have the resources. So I have tried to hire interns at my company, but one thing one of my machine learning lead told me is, yeah, I could hire somebody who wants to get into machine learning, but we don't have anybody to manage them. We're all too busy. So if there's a way you can get in and hit the ground running, do that. But just keep in mind, is a lot of small companies, they don't have the resources to manage somebody and to tell them what to do and everything like that. Just keep that in mind. And I think I've mentioned to you some resources in a previous conversation. There's lots of tools out there now to kind of AI tools or examine your resume that you can actually put, one of them is jobscan.com. You can put your resume, or no, you put the job description, the qualifications on there, then it scans your resume to see if it matches up. So, and it suggests changes. Resumes these days are much more crucial in that you have numbers in there of some sort, or some sort of metrics that the what is called the ATS system can look at. While the enterprise company is probably better for recent graduate, they're also harder to get through that ATS
initial screening.
Yeah, they're called ATS systems. No systems are brutal, and they're not updated. They're not always. There's no money in it for them to update those systems. So sometimes they're old systems and they're bad, and it's just like you apply and nothing happens. So the better route is to reach out on LinkedIn and find somebody in that company you want to work for, and reach out to them and see if you can, chat with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I want to apply for this role. I saw you posted it. LinkedIn is the central resource to apply for jobs. There's also an Angel List, which is really good. One thing when we recruit, we want to know that they're motivated to work in a startup. Why do they want to work for a startup? Do they want a job, or do they want to really be passionate about what they do? We don't want somebody that just wants a job. They can go work at the government or work for a big enterprise company. That's fine. Don't work for us because we can't manage you. We don't have the time. So, and in the artificial intelligence industry, it's moving extremely fast. It's very competitive.
So going back to the first question, how did you get into international business?
Yeah,
how did you decide to?
What I previously mentioned, but I think the one big thing is after college at CSU, I joined the Peace Corps, and it changed my life forever. Learning Spanish, learning a different culture, experiencing it in a different way that I had never realized existed. It opened my eyes to a whole new universe that exists out there beyond the US. There's 190-ish countries in the world, and it ignited a passion in me I'd never realized. And it goes beyond travel. It's more about experience and understanding different cultures in a completely different way. So I think that was sort of a key thing. And then you had asked me earlier about general advice for students. Mm-hmm. And like I've mentioned to you before, the big thing is the world is changing, especially in tech. You don't have to have a job. You can be a TikTok creator. You can be an Instagram creator, I guess, and then YouTube creator. That's another avenue. And people are making a lot of money doing that. But don't do it to make money. Do it to just, if you're interested in something, just film it and see if it takes off, but don't do something or copy somebody else like Facebook does. Just do something because you have a passion about something, whether it be pets, whether it be animals, whether it be wildlife, whether it be nature, whatever it is, travel, a hobby you have, film it, teach people. There's a woman on TikTok who does instructional videos on Microsoft Excel. And she is making, nobody wants to do those. Those are boring, but she knows it really well. She has a passion for it. And I don't know. I think the estimates are, I don't know what the estimates are, but she's making way more money than you'll ever find in a job. And you're in control if you can do that. So the world now is changing fast. Blockchain is going to change the world we're in, hopefully. Not everything, if you're struggling to find a job, don't be disheartened. There's other ways to make money out there, much more than when I graduated college. When I graduated college, you had to find a job and that was it. And that sucked. Sorry. It was not good. Now I think it's a much bigger world now, and there's other ways.
Thank you. All great advice. I'm sure students will find that very helpful. I really appreciate your time. Very glad that you were able to speak with us today. If you need anything else, let me know.